All right, here we are again with undisputed Harley Smith and the
Dispute.
organic mechanic. We're just going to pick we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. We generated quite a few questions on our end, and I kind of uh, put those questions in order. Kind of the we encountered a lot of problems with new gardeners in the beginning, starting out. How do I be successful? I'm new to this. So through a lot of conversations, I put like the top three mistakes or top three things you need to address to be successful. So if you're a beginning gardener just starting out, soil, hydroponic, backyard, side yard, front yard, whatever, um, just going over these real simple three issues that if we can avoid these mistakes, we can be successful in the end. So I think that's what we're going to run through today.
Okay, sounds good. What's the first one?
All right. The first one that we always tell people is have a plan and do the prep work before you start. Have a plan. Get things organized. Make sure you're set up right. Make sure you have everything to get started. Just some basic planning goes a long way. And I know how excited people get. You know, they got some clones, they got some seeds, they got some rootstock, something. They want to get it growing, get it set up, and start harvesting or start eating or start producing just whatever they're growing. So we get in a hurry, and a little bit of prep work, a little bit of planning goes a long way, especially if you're in soil. If you're in soil, you know, um, follow a lot of the manufacturers have suggestions and feed charts and directions that can really help you be successful. If you're growing in soil, make sure you have the proper amendments. Make sure your soil is what it needs to be when you start. You know, do your prep work that way to be successful. And I know there's a lot of different ways in hydroponic to prep work. Maybe you could address some of those.
Okay, yeah, well, the first thing is you got to make sure you have a space. A lot of times you get started with some clones or something. Oh, wait, where am I going to put them now? They're going to be full grown. You have to think of how big they're going to be at the end, right? And then create your space. Not, oh, I got this little tray, got a tray full of clones. Um, and then just do your basics. For your first grow, you need your light. You gotta make sure you have a good light that will cover your space. You need a submersible or a fan for some air movement, just an oscillating. Those two things alone, the space, the light, some air movement, that should be enough to get you going. And then then you go from there with, of course, your nutrients and so forth. But I think one mistake that some growers make in hydro, one of them with the space problem, is they don't leave themselves enough room to work.
Right.
They want to, oh, we'll just fill this closet or something, or I'll fill this area. And then you have the plants and you can't get to the plants. You have to be able to plant it so you can reach every single plant in your garden in as easy as possible. The easier, I know guys in the old days, I've heard stories, right? In the old
Yeah.
days where people filled up a whole room with plants. Oh, wow, look, I got a room. And then they have to crawl on their belly like through the jungle just to be able to try to get to a plant. Then how are you going to prune and train that way? You can't reach it, you can't really take care of it. So yeah,
Exactly.
space is one.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen some rooms where they have to use one of those mechanic creepers that lay on their back and like do it that way and try to work facing the ceiling going around on the creeper on the floor. Yeah, not good planning.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of it myself in the past too, especially in a greenhouse area. I have a little small greenhouse. Oh yeah, I want to use the space, but I learned pretty pretty quickly. I finally started making my own rolling benches, so I could
Right.
huddle them together underneath the light, so they're getting the maximum light. But then I could open up the row, make a row in between, so I could get to every single plant easily.
Yeah,
Now,
that's good advice. Good
yeah,
advice.
the other the other thing was water. You know, for a beginner, I'm talking beginners here, right? The
Yeah,
rest of us,
absolutely.
this is not for the rest of us who've been doing this. But the other one was when I first started, I'd fill my reservoir and do all my work. Okay, good. I got it all together. Perfect pH, perfect EC, you know. But when it came time to change the reservoir, I'd take a jug and I'd start bailing water out of the reservoir, right, to empty it and then refill. And what it took time, it was pain. So after a while, maybe I don't have to change the reservoir quite yet, put it off. And then later on, just go to the hardware store, get a water mover. You hook a hose up to, and it's like we use for a basement,
Yeah.
cleaning out your basement, and it takes it right down to a quarter of an inch. So
Uh-huh.
just set that in, plug it in, and it's empty. And then just take the garden hose. I also had a side reservoir. That's a recommendation to let the water warm up to room temperature,
Right.
especially in the winter. And then just take my water mover out of my reservoir, pop it in my side garbage can, fill it back up in 5 minutes. Piece of cake. If it's easy to do, then you're going to be more likely to do it on a regular basis because it's not a problem. So space and ease of use. Think of that ahead of time too. How how can I make it as easy as possible to maintain?
Oh, good point. Good point. And then take notes of what you do. I know you address that a
Mm.
lot, but
Oh yeah.
take notes. Have a journal because I think you said it takes three gardens to really kind of figure out your system or your style or what you need to do. So take good notes so you can always reflect back on it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Your
planning
third
goes a long
grow,
way.
your third grow is your first grow, right? And
Mhm.
the best growers are the best record keepers. No doubt about it. At a commercial level, I mean, you can't even keep track of all the data yourself. You need to have some computer help in aid just to keep track of all your set points and the changes that are happening. But for a
Yeah.
beginner, though, it's pretty simple, really. Uh, like I said, light, a 400-watt light will cover about a 4x4 area. 600-watt light, a little bit bigger. You want to keep it as close as you can without burning. And this is the simple way, right?
Mhm.
Close as you can, maybe a foot, foot and a half above the growing tips, and then raise the light as the plants grow. You have light movers that do that, or I used to just use chains and S hooks in the old
Mhm.
days. I hang the light
Yeah.
from a chain, and then just as the plants grew, just raise it up a couple of notches, and it works. It doesn't. You don't have to have a lot of equipment and expertise to do it as long as you have that. And of course, the air movement. And your temperatures kind of fix themselves indoors because you're growing it's room temperature. When the
Right.
lights are on, it's a little bit warmer. When the lights are off, it's a little bit cooler. I would recommend, here's a good one, even for a beginner, just have a min-max thermometer, your hygrometer, just so you know what the hottest temperature was and you know what the coolest temperature was at night, what your highest humidity, what your lowest humidity, just to know is a good thing because if you need to make adjustments, you'll get it. Sometimes say, oh, my humidity is between 40 and 60%. I'm good. But it might be 90% at night, and that's too high. Maybe you need to warm it up a little bit. So just some basic understanding of your environment, just to know what you're dealing with and know what the needs of the plants are. And just stay within some highs and lows, and you should be fine.
Great advice. Great advice for indoors. We can apply some of that with outdoor and soil grow and things like that. Spacing is important.
Mm,
Even if you're outdoors, growing in containers or beds or planters, and in if you're planting directly in the ground, yeah, that spacing is very important too. So just do a little research, watch a couple of YouTube videos. There's some really good how-tos, basic setups, basic planning and kind of get a picture of it in your mind before you get going. It'll go a long ways. That will help.
okay.
And that moves along. Number two, the main, the second most request we get is people sending pictures of their garden saying what's wrong. Uh,
No.
you know, and what's going on here? I don't know what's happening. And generally, the number, well, this will be number two. The number two reason is overfeeding, too much nutrient or one nutrient domination. Locking out other you know micronutrients and things like that. And generally, it's nitrogen. So overfeeding is our number two that we see with the pictures and the questions we get. Um, what are some thoughts you have on that?
Oh yeah, the for beginners, for sure. That's to me the biggest rookie mistake is over fertilizing in hydroponics. They look at the label and they say, "Oh, 2 teaspoons per gallon," for example. Oh,
Yes.
well, if 2 teaspoons is good, then 4 teaspoons must be twice as good. So they're overdoing it. And then they're, especially with the nitrogen, they already have the directions are there for a reason because they want to control the amount of nitrogen that plant needs. Now you double that up, and all of a sudden it has a negative effect. You can start to choke out the plant, you make it harder for the plant to take up water, or you can, if you overdo it with nitrogen, the nitrogen toxicity, you really overdo it. And believe me, when I was super ignorant before hydroponics, I've done it. You
We've
can
all done it.
delay, yeah, we can delay or even prevent flowering. My, I'll tell you this, my confession from my way, 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 way long ago, before I even got into hydroponics, was I wanted to grow some tomatoes in my backyard. Okay, let me try doing some tomatoes. Well, I knew plants need nitrogen. It's like all I knew about plant nutrition. Well, plants need nitrogen. So I went down to the store and I looked at the fertilizers and they had look at my NPK ratios. Oh, this one has the highest number. So this one must be the best. And then I went on top of that and said, well, if a little is good, and then more is better. So I over fertilized even with the high nitrogen one, right? So, and it worked. I said, "Oh, look at this. My plants were the biggest in the whole neighborhood. They were growing dark green foliage. Oh, yeah, look at me. I know what I'm doing." Guess what I didn't get?
Fruit.
Tomatoes. I
Yeah.
got no I got the biggest tomato plants in the neighborhood, no fruits at all. At the end of the season, maybe a little bit before now, I started to get my very first little green tomatoes, and then the frost hit and I was done. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but that's where a little knowledge can hurt you. The key for a beginner, follow directions, and if you're going to make a mistake on too little, not too much. If the if the if the label says 4 teaspoons per gallon, do half strength or 3/4 strength. It's better than giving it too much. Because if you start to get a little deficiency, just give it what it's deficient in, it'll come right back. But you overdo it and it's toxic levels, sometimes all you can do is start over.
Yeah, good point. Good point. You can always add to, it's hard to take from. So, and
That's right.
most manufacturers um, will have feed charts, especially for hydroponics or specific, plant growing operations. Follow those recommendations. Look at the feed charts. Keep that in your journal. And try to follow that as close as you can. I know here at Kelp4Less.com we have some feed charts, and they can be successful if they would just follow those. Another question we get, well, what's the frequency of feeding? And a lot of that depends on the size of the plant as well, especially if you're in soil. And so there's a lot of variables there, but if you would just follow the chart from the beginning, after doing this a couple times, you'll really get a good handle on how to do that. And
Hmm.
it, every plant's different. A lot of varieties have different requirements. So just getting the feel of it will really help you develop your own system or your own regimen. But again, follow the charts for success. You should be okay.
Yeah. My very first hydroponic system, Brandon, was a flood and drain system. Pretty simple, and that was easy. It's just the water and nutrients in the reservoir underneath, the plants in the top. I had them in just little 6-inch pots with expanded clay pellets for lots of aeration, and then I set the timer to irrigate 3 or 4 times a day. They would flood. The timer would come on, flood the roots. And all you had to do is flood them until it was fully immersed to the top, and then the timer would turn off. It would drain back down, pulling oxygen to the roots. And because it was expanded clay, there was very, very good drainage, lots of aeration. Remember, it's not overwatering that kills the plant, it's lack of oxygen. So with that flood and drain, it was perfect. So it's simple. That's one of the benefits of hydroponics is you typically have a lot more aeration at the root zone than you would in soil. You couldn't do that in soil. It would turn into mud, and then fill up all the little spaces between the particles, and they would suffocate the plants. Where if you have nice big light pebbles of expanded clay, it's a lot of airspace.
Boy, that's a good point. That's a common mistake in soil grows too, and outdoor grows is overwatering. Boy, and you hit it on the nose too. The plant kind of gets suffocated. And we always tell people, check, stick your hand in it, feel it. Can you make a ball with the soil in your hand? Well, it's probably a little bit too wet still to water. Let that dry out a little bit. That needs to breathe. And you'll have a lot better success trying to um, trying to water properly when the soil's dry, rather than trying to water properly if it's a little damp. Yeah, let it dry out. You got to touch, you got to feel, and you got to see. Good boy, that's a good point. Overwatering, that can be the demise to a lot of good outcomes in the end.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. In pots, it's kind of easy. In pots, it's easier than you don't have to take a ball like a clay. That's a good one for out in the field, right?
Yeah,
It's a good test.
yeah.
But in a pot, you have your full watering till the water is coming out the bottom
Hmm.
of the plant. So about 15% of what you're putting in comes out the bottom, because that way it washes away some of the excess nutrients too. And
Hmm.
then wait till it's almost completely dry before you water it again. And you'll know. I mean, you could look at the surface, but if it's in a pot, you can just kind of
Yeah.
push it with your foot or pick it up. You know how heavy it is when it's fully wet. Then you get an idea of how much it is when it's dry. But the mistake is when you're giving it a little water. Oh, does it need some more water? Give it some more water. Watering it all the time. And even if it's not completely saturated, you're going to get little pockets that are wet. And just those little pockets of overly wet soil will cause root rot.
Hmm.
It's if it becomes suffocated, then it's anaerobic without oxygen. It's drowning. And the pythium, the root rots, and the rhizoctonia, those are anaerobic fungi. They grow in stagnant water without oxygen. So if you have little pockets that are always anaerobic, they're always wet, they're going to start those root hairs start dying back, and they can't take up water, the nutrients, and then they start to wilt. And you go, oh, I guess they need more water. You see what I'm saying? It's just one of those things, the rookie mistake. It just gets worse and worse over time if you overwater. But let it dry out, let it get plenty of oxygen, and then another great watering, full watering.
Yeah. Yeah. Rhizot can be a killer too. Hate the Rhizot. As a matter of fact, it's so bad I wanted to be Rhizot for Halloween. That would scare everybody.
Dressed up as a fungi.
Fun guy.
Fungi, I'm having fun. Yeah.
Oh, good points. Good points. Yeah, that watering in soil again. Take notes, and it goes back to the first thing on your spacing too. You got to be able to get around, so you got to be able to look at that thing. So yeah, good point on the watering. I think the
Yeah.
third thing we get is underfeeding.
Hmm.
Underfeeding is the third thing. We get pictures all the time, and a lot of deficiencies are really quick to point out by pictures. That there's some good detailed pictures, and a lot of times people um, they're not following any type of guideline or any type of feed chart. They're like, oh, I want to do it all organic, so I put some kelp on and I did some fulvic and this and that. And well, those are good biostimulants and amendments, but where are
Mhm.
the nutrients? We need to focus on the nutrients first before we get, crafty like that. And so, yeah, underfeeding is the third biggest one that we see.
Yeah, underfeeding. That's yeah. I get the pictures too, but usually, Brandon, they send me a picture of a leaf. They send me a picture of a yellow leaf. What's wrong with my plants? And I did. I wrote an article for Maximum Yield magazine years ago. If you ever want to do if any of you out there want to read it, you can just go to the Maximum Yield website and then do a
Hmm.
search on Harley Smith or something. And it was called "Why Are My Leaves Turning Yellow?" So if you're underfeeding, if I see yellow intervenal chlorosis, if the veins are green but the tissue between them is yellow, it's starting at the bottom of the plant, the
Hmm.
older leaves,
Yeah.
then probably a magnesium deficiency, more than likely. So just give it a little bit of CalMag or just a little Epsom salt that comes right back. If I see the yellowing at the top of the plant, the new growth, intervenal, it's probably one of the transition metals, more likely iron. But if it's an iron deficiency, doesn't mean, oh, just give it some more iron. You want to find out why. Why is there deficiency? It's probably pH related. So check your pH, make sure it's in the zone. If it is, plants will start taking up iron again. Iron is a catalyst to make chlorophyll. It'll green right back up. Literally, it'll just fix itself just by adjusting the pH. And if it's just a general yellowing, just a pale yellowing or pale green for the top and the bottom, starting at the bottom going up, it's probably nitrogen. I mean, so I can narrow it down to those three things. But if there's something else wrong, like a root problem, then any and all the deficiencies can show up. So you're right. That's the good third one. If everything else is right, then do that. And I usually ask them, what stage of growth are you in?
Hmm.
Um, when I see that, and then I ask them again, what's your what's your EC? And if they're running really low EC, it's a deficiency. All you have to do is give it a little bit more stronger nutrient in balance. It'll fix itself right there too. So you don't now at the commercial level it's different. Then we really get right down individual nutrients, individual cultivars, right to the parts per million. But for a hobbyist, if it's too low of an EC in hydroponics, you're probably going to eventually get a deficiency of something, and then just raise it up a little bit. And if you overdo it, what I say during heavy flower, you want to kind of put some healthy stress on the plant, little by little, small changes. Add a little bit at a time, a little more fertilizer, a little bit more until you see signs of stress. If the leaves start to curl a little bit, it's still okay. But if they start to curl and turn brown, then you know you've overdone it. So you check your EC, you write it down in your journal. And in this environment, with this cultivar, this is the highest I can go. That's too high. So you got to back it down from that and make sure you don't go that high again. And keep it right on the edge where it's full nutritional, a little healthy stress, you'll get really good results.
Good advice. That's great advice. We get a lot of those pictures too, and you're right. The picture of one leaf is very confusing. If you can get a whole spectrum of the plant, it's a lot more helpful. A lot of times, what we see are the very bottom, the older, the mature leaves. Everybody, it's a common question. What's going on with my leaves at the bottom? They're dying. They're falling off. They're yellow. And if they send you a nice picture of their garden, it's easy to say, well, they're not getting any sunlight. You have too much
Yeah.
plant foliage there. They're not getting any light. And yeah, they can't do what they're supposed to do. Just cut them off because it's not, they're not going to come back. You're too crowded. That's a common one we get.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes the yellow leaves are it's just natural. They get toward the end, they say, okay, I'm sending my nutrients right to the flowers or to the fruit. The old ones, just like in the fall outdoors, the leaves are going to start to turn yellow, and then they're going to fall off. I mean, there's nothing wrong. It's just that stage of their life cycle. Nothing to worry about. If I get a little yellowing toward the end, that doesn't bother me. And when someone asks me, Brandon, they say, Harley, do you ever see yellow leaves in your garden? I'll go, um, every time. It's normal. I never panic about it. But if it's yellowing too soon, or I can see that it's affecting the growth of the plant, then I make some changes.
Boy, this is great advice. Hopefully, it'll help some people if they watch this get off to a good start and be successful. So, just a quick
Hmm.
recap. You know, plan ahead, do the prep work, have a roadmap. Set yourself up to success. That's stage one. Set yourself up for success, and chances are you'll be successful. Number two, don't overfeed. Follow the directions, follow a feed chart. There's a lot of info out there on YouTube. It can get very confusing. So my best advice is just whatever nutrient regimen you're using, follow those directions, and you'll learn. You'll learn as you grow, as you continue to, have another garden and another garden and another garden. Very important. So yeah, don't overfeed and don't underfeed. Again, follow the directions. And once you get experienced, you can really start tweaking things around a little bit based on, what you're growing. And, a lot of varieties, we've touched on this before, a lot of varieties of plants react different to the nutrient regimen. Some require,
Yeah.
different things. A lot of tomato varieties are like that as well. Um,
Hmm.
it's a common thing. So stick with one you like, write it down in your journal, and try to repeat the process and do it better next time.
Hmm.
Pretty good
Very
advice.
good. All good advice. Perfect summary. Um, and I guess the next thing too is when you're a beginner, keep it simple. I mean, even, I do classes. I'm doing my Master Grower Short course, and I'm teaching all about precision fertilizer management, and teaching them about, vapor pressure deficit, and I'm teaching them about all the biostimulants and microbes. And
Yeah.
a beginner sees this, and they want to start using all the things, everything all at once. And that's a mistake. You just start out with the basics. Get a Like I said, your third grow is your first grow. Just get your pH and EC and get your environment dialed in really well. See how your plants respond. Don't just add everything, because even if you do great, if it goes great, well, what was it? Was it the kelp? Was it the balance of the nutrient? Was it the light? You don't know. And if something on the other side, if something goes wrong, you don't know where to go to fix it. Was it too much of this or too much of that? Or not enough of this? No, keep it simple to start, and take good notes, then make small improvements the next time. Maybe add one or two things only, a couple of little changes. And then your third one, you should be able to dial that in so you're getting maximum yields and top quality. And you can reproduce it every time, but just change one or two things at the most, and small changes.
Good advice too, and try to stick with the same variety you start with. Don't try to do a bunch of different varieties at once. That is very confusing. Even for an experienced gardener, that can be very confusing. So
You can.
start off with one variety that works for you, whatever that is, and that'll really help you learn and not
Hmm.
get confused quickly. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, good information. I appreciate all of our customers calling us or sending emails and all that stuff. So we we do try to address, I guess, the common questions that come across us for the week. And so yeah, I just wanted to run them by you, and it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I like once in a while to say some things for the beginners too.
Yeah.
Even tonight I'm going to be starting a two-part series on light, CO2, and environmental control. But I want to start out with some of the basic things we talked about today
Mm.
for the beginners, and then as we go along, go deeper and deeper into it. And exact temperatures and exact VPDs and those kinds of things that a commercial grower would have in mind. So, so it's good. I like being able to talk to the beginner because we've made those rookie mistakes, and it's great if we can give a little advice to help others not make them, especially the first one or two times. There's nothing worse than getting all excited about your new hobby and then having a disaster on your first grow. So then you say, well, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. But if you can just keep it simple, do what Brand was saying today and me, then you're going to be successful. I guarantee you that. You're going to get good results, probably better than you've seen in the past. And that just let that joy motivate you to the next round and the round after that.
Good, yeah, good point. The joy. It's fun, and it's fun to
It
be
is.
successful, and it's fun to try to do that again. And it just, it's a reward. It's a very rewarding feeling when you get to consume or eat or something that you had basically total control of from start to finish. Very fun, very
Hmm.
rewarding, a great hobby.
Hmm.
Very good point. Well,
Okay.
good. We'll probably have to get back to the real world and go to work now, darn it.
Oh yeah, I have to prep for tonight's class, so there's a lot of materials I have to go through, and sometimes it gets a little confusing because you get different inputs from different places. You have to narrow that down with what's the science. I tend to get conservative, but I have work to do today too to be able to do a good class tonight on light, CO2, and environmental control.
Yeah, sounds like a good one. And once again, thanks for meeting up. I sure like doing this, and can't wait to see you next week.
Okay, see you next week.
You bet. The undisputed Harley Smith.